Hello and welcome back. We have Javier Dominguez on the bottom of your screen playing four-color bean versus Cory Baumeister on the top of your screen playing with Evoke. Excuse me. And Cory has a strong start in hand.
Cory's hand is insane. It's got the turn 1 double grief backed up with 2 copies of Fable. No Bowmasters, which is key in this matchup, but I think you're snapping that off so fast if you're Cory. And on the side of Javier, you got a turn 1 piece of interaction, turn 2 pieces of interaction, and a couple of pitch elementals to go with it. So you're probably happy on the side of Javier as well, although no beans.
No beans yet. Now, we drew the Orcish Bowmaster, so Cory really with the script in, we're going to have to see what Brad's relation with MTG Melee and MagicOnline is like when that comes up, but we are going to see this evoke grief, and I wonder, will Javier evoke the Solitude or not in response?
I have to imagine that he will not, because Cory actually has to take this Dead Gone first and foremost, and then spend the Undying spell, and then once the Undying spell is spent, that'll give Javier the opportunity to Solitude this grief, because if you don't take that Dead Gone, 2 damage will kill the grief with the Undying on the stack.
Shock good enough in 2023, as we do see him let it resolve, just like you pointed out. And it looks like Cory is maybe just taking a second here. Think about it. So, actually, maybe this is Javier actually thinking it through a little bit. Just double checking. You think you know these things, but it's always fine to take a second and just double check your work.
You ever save a video game and then you're like, did I save? Save again. Gotta double check.
Who hasn't done that?
Everybody's done it. It's a rite of passage.
Yeah.
Solitude. You think would you Solitude here, Mason?
I'm pretty tempted to do it just to get the body off the board. Obviously, Leyline Binding can do that as well in the next turn, but you're going to lose something, and it's possible that, Cory just takes the binding, and then you're left with nothing, really. So I kind of like this, even though it doesn't mean we're going to be top decking. That's kind of what our deck is best about against the Scam deck, is that, we have beans and more redraw effects. So makes some amount of sense here.
And we do see the Solitude onto the side of Javier, taking down this grief. No coming back. It is dead after all. Begone, grief. You're in Solitude now.
Exiled, like a lot of you are hoping it does in Modern. Did you see it not come back? And we just have this Fury. And, if we didn't have the Bowmasters from Cory, a bean off the top would, I think, mean, Javier is pretty favored. But, we at least have that. Oh, and the Fire Ice picked up a clean answer to the Bowmaster if Cory chooses to deploy it early.
I kind of expect an upkeep ice here. I don't think that Javier is going to save the fire unless he really is afraid of the Bowmaster, which he might be, but there's no bean on the table yet, so real reason to be super scared of this Bowmaster currently.
Yeah, we'll have to see how much Javier is planning for the late game versus some early game, trying to get some time back, and looks like it goes.
No upkeep ice. You were right.
Yeah.
Saving the fire.
People are always saying Javier and me a lot of funny, smart goats, just things that they say about us.
I've never said that.
Well, you're stubborn. Yeah, Fetch of the Triumph and untap return. And another Fury picked up.
Yeah, imagine Cory's probably going to flash in this Bowmaster into the impending fire.
The real question is, will Javier fire it off right away to play around Not Dead After All, or will he hold it for something like a Dashed Ragavan potentially, which we know is in hand, but, Not Dead After All could also be there, and then the Bowmaster's back in play and a real problem.
1 damage upstairs puts Javier down to 17. Couple of 1/1s, and we see Javier hovering the fire. 1-2. Get out of here, archers. This is canon from Lord of the Rings.
Speaking of canon from Lord of the Rings, Ragavan, our favorite card from Lord of the Rings story, probably going to be doing something this start. So we actually have a Dashed Ragavan. Oh, it looks like... Let me think.
Maybe a little Thoughtseize into play a Ragavan so that we can for sure get this Fable down the next turn. Because if you dash this Ragavan and you want to cast this Thoughtseize, it's a little bit awkward. So I kind of like just the Thoughtseize, check the way, and then play the Ragavan.
All right, what if we would just dash the Ragavan just to guarantee the Fable? Did you know Javier just has at least one Fury and an unknown? Now, it turned out Javier had double Fury, but seeing a snap fetch here from Javier.
I think I do like the Thoughtseize on that turn. It gives you a lot of valuable information, and taking the Fury guaranteed is probably good enough at this point in the game, because Fury's good against all these Fables anyways.
Very valid. Big draw step here. Javier, he draws Magnetic Sinkhole. An answer to that Ragavan.
1, 2, 3, delve 3. Ragavan bites the dust. Into the sinkhole you go.
Mm-hmm. And this is one of the things I love about Magic Dingo is that, that was a card that players really loved it when MH1 first came out, sort of went away, kind of, wasn't really worth playing after a little while. And then Up to Beanstalk made it where it's like, oh, this thing being a expensive but cheap spell actually makes you want to play one. And that's so cool when Magic goes that way. As we do see a Fable the Mirror Breaker get played for Dingo, but a Shardless Agent off the top for Javier.
That's kind of insane here, being able to cascade into the beans, and then if we draw a red card, we can, get some value out of that Fury once the second Fable comes down, but a second Beanstalk is the pickup instead, which is even better, arguably, because now next turn, after the second Fable comes down, you get double the value, Mason.
I love the beans.
You're all about them beans. And it looks like this Goblin Shaman is probably connecting as well. Do you block here for your Javier, knowing that the Fury is probably going to come down next turn?
Probably just because Javier knows that it's going to be like a long game here. And, the Fury will get some value eventually. So no real reason to rush it, especially with the Flip Fable coming. So another Solitude's drawn. Javier really wants some lands, but hard to complain with Double Bean. And he hits the land.
One
Oh,
land away from hard casting either of these elementals, and one red card, one white card away from evoking them. I feel like Javier's in a very good spot right now.
yeah. Javier just a land away from being able to hard cast all these elementals and completely take over this game.
Bins a lightning bolt, opting to keep the Dolphy in hand, Void walking on him.
Yeah, and
Well, maybe not. No, both of them bite the dust and pick up another Fable.
yeah, that's pretty good. And Cory knows that no matter what, Javier has the Fury in hand. So at least a red card just means these things might get cleaned up, and maybe he's trying to look for something like a Not Dead After All to save the Fable, but ends up just drawing another Fable.
And we'll see the third Fable come down. More 2/2s and a Land of Fury. Not the best here, but filtering that extra polluted delta into the graveyard is going to be pretty powerful. And we do see that Javier pick up the land drop, which means here comes the Fury.
Yeah, that was the big draw step for Javier. Getting to slam this Fury now has swung the advantage bar so far in his favor, making it so he doesn't have to evoke these cards to stabilize the board. Just means Dingo's gonna be, Cory's gonna be falling further and further behind Dingo, and it's gonna take a lot for him to stabilize this draw. And he's already drawing so much of his action so early.
Yeah, and so that Fury is 5 mana, Divination, plus
Mhm,
Pyrokinesis, plus
mhm.
a 3/3 double striker. That seems good, Mason.
I'm big fan of the Fury, as we are gonna see a double discard here.
Can we get all those stapled onto a card for Modern Horizons 3, please, Mason?
You know what? I don't want to spoil too much, but of course, I
Mm.
just did that times 2 value size it.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah,
Supersize me?
yeah, exactly. Call back to the early 2000s. I was in the first grade.
I remember having to watch that movie multiple times for school. A third copy of Beanstalk is the pickup for Javier. Maybe we say, play a bean into Dead Gone something plus Solitude. Draw 3. Little
Yeah.
Jace's Ingenuity. We've upgraded.
Oh, that's the fourth bean, but you're not actually able to play it. And we are going to see an evoked solitude here. Draw 3. Javier wants to see what he draws before he decides to, dead gone. And we pick up the fourth beanstalk.
What's the point? See, this is not a combo deck. Drawing the beans and drawing the Shardless Agents. Come on, we got to do better.
Yeah. And, that's why Javier is only one of the top 10 best players of all time instead of the top 3. If he'd done better.
Rookie numbers.
We actually see, the potential that Javier is probably just going to end up playing the Shardless Agent as a blocker. Just be like, well, I'm so far ahead on cards. I just, get a body on the board.
Basic Forest into potentially Shardless Agent, maybe just another bean. Do you even want to deploy the fourth bean here, or are you afraid of decking?
I think Javier is probably in a spot where he's going to be fine on decking. He's going to have to get pretty unlucky with the Shardless Agent in hand for the endurance to ever get got by a Thoughtseize effect. So I think he's okay deploying the fourth bean here, or normally you might have a little bit of hesitance if the game was a little bit different. And Bold off the top is a good draw for Cory.
It does answer the Fury here, but I mean, this Teferi is going to bounce a bean and then allow Javier to redeploy it, which is 2 more looks at a piece of action plus the draw step there.
Yeah, and even if we miss, we're only at 11 life here after the attack. So Cory's going to need to draw something like Orcish Bowmasters. And, well, we've drawn the Endurance.
Don't got to worry about decking anymore. Endurance will allow Javier to shuffle his own graveyard back into his deck if need be, or just be a blocker here.
Yeah, and we're seeing Javier take a second. After the Endurance draw, he might have a thing where he maybe wants to do something like bounce the Goblin Shaman and maybe think about blocking with Endurance. But if he does that, he might be decking. Looks like he's actually just going to bounce the Fable, stop anything like Bowmasters from happening to him.
That's a very interesting line. I wouldn't have expected a Fable bounce there because it's giving Cory a lot of value, but maybe Javier's just not afraid of this extra value that Cory's getting because he's flushed with value of his own.
Yeah, and I am so surprised by the Shardless Agent staying in hand. It looks like the Endurance is going to come down just to, eat something in combat, and it's going to get a Ragavan, so that's all
Pretty
well and good.
good.
Yeah. I love the patience there from Javier. Just want to use these cards on different invoking, or maybe, to cross the finish line. And thinks, well, if this Endurance dies, I have so many cards in deck, I probably won't deck, but, maybe a 4% chance-ish Javier dies to decking now.
I'm a little bit surprised that Javier didn't crack the fetch for an extra card in deck, but I get it because if you draw Omnath, then it's a little bit better.
Yeah, it's really hard. These sort of micro decisions like that, right? Both totally reasonable. You could debate over it for hours, but Javier went to go one way and Dingo in another, and they both pay off in different circumstances. So we'll have to see exactly comes up to bite Dingo. I'm sorry, comes up to bite Javier in the end.
I'm gonna start charging you every time you call Cory Dingo.
I called Javier Dingo that time, so
yeah.
Right.
Got to get your scam players straight, Mason.
Wow, I cannot believe. Look at this. Now he's going to fetch at the end of turn. Look at that.
Okay.
Look at that.
Did not care about the Omnath draw, I suppose.
That's he's just saying Cory Baumeister. Who's that? I'm sorry. I'm just gonna kill him. I'm just gonna murder him. You see an ice draw for the redraw, has so many beans, doesn't care.
Another Teferi is the pickup too. Maybe we're gonna see this one bounce a Goblin Shaman this time. Maybe bounce a bean.
Yeah, lots of different options here.
Probably a Goblin Shaman if I had to guess.
Same. See, this is why I really hate doing like talking about like what I would do and etc. That's just, I was so surprised with the Shardless play on the last turn, because now we would be like kind of in the same position, except like we would have the Endurance to be blocking, potentially. So it's just very unique. I'm trying to figure out exactly what Javier's thinking, because if you're at home and you're trying to improve, one of the best ways to improve is to watch good players and think about what you would do and what's the reason why. And I'm just coming up in a little bit of a loss. Maybe you can help me, Dingo.
Yeah, bounces a bean. I kind of expected him to do that the first time instead of bouncing a Fable, so I'm a little bit curious as to the decision to bounce the bean now and not the Goblin Shaman, because I think the only way you lose this game is by Bowmaster and kind of dying to incremental points of damage.
I agree. Yeah, we found the Solitude, but it's going to just get... I mean, Cory's going to take in a redraw, Cory doesn't realize that somehow Javier only has one thing that triggers bean in hand.
Yeah, and this Grief is going to actually take this Solitude and be pretty good for Cory here. Although Dead Gone plus Shardless Agent is going to kind of muck up the board a little bit, prevent Cory from pushing any sort of significant damage. It's going to give Javier a lot more time to find Omnath or something to gain life, like another Solitude.
I like this play by Javier. You see him move the Solitude around his hand. That way, Cory can't click on it.
Yeah, catch me if you can. And Cory, it looks like he's been hitting the aim trainer because he did manage to click on the Solitude efficiently, effectively.
Cory sorry, yeah. I was just going to say Cory Baumeister is an aim demon in Valorant. You know how it is. He plays Reyna for sure, insta-locks, doesn't turn on comms, never plays the spike, never plays the bomb, just walks around, bop, bop, bop.
One tapping?
Yeah, just, you know what? One shot, one kill.
And I'm a little bit curious. I guess he's got the Teferi out, so he's not afraid of an Undying effect. So it doesn't need to Dead Gone this Grief right now. Looks like picks up a black and white Verdant Catacombs. New art added the Moto recently. There, it's the color. Color has returned.
Yeah, Cory's actually debuting a new secret layer called No Ink. He had against you as well. I don't know if you noticed on your side of the battlefield. Maybe you
I
didn't
did
have the
not.
premium. Understandable.
No attacks on the side of Cory, not willing to trade this grief, knowing that there is a dead on the side of Javier, and Omnath is the pickup. A huge one. Can we draw a land, gain 4 life, and probably put this game too far out of reach? Leyline Binding, that one's good.
Yeah, why draw a land, Dingo, if I could just draw the kill spell and 4 more cards?
Oh, 1, 2, 3, 4. Fury, Fury,
Oh, and that
Fury.
is
Oh,
gonna
no, it's Fire
clean
Eyes.
it up. I assuming Javier evokes here, I can't imagine Cory coming back without destroying Shieldreds and Bowmasters every turn for the rest of the game.
This game is completely over, Mason. There is no coming back on the side of Cory at this point, and we see him pack
Yeah.
it in, pack it up, says, "I'm done here. I don't
Mhm.
wanna see these beans anymore. Get him out of here."
You know it's extra bad when you're Cory's side because he could fetch to play the Fury, but chooses to evoke it, meaning he has more spells to interact, so you know it's over. As we see Cory very quickly grab the Blood Moons and the Shieldred and then stop moving the mouse.
I wonder if he's gonna bring in the Bone Crusher Giants in this matchup, or if he's just has those for, like, the ring matchups and maybe the Scam Mirror. He did bring him in against me, and they were pretty powerful, although not more powerful than Shieldred.
True. We see Javier sideboard out endurance to bring in his sideboard copy, prefers that art. Um,
Yeah. So on the scam side of this matchup, I typically board out the terminates since I think you're probably losing the game anyways if you're trying to like answer their threats one for one. The only one that
mhm,
you really care to terminate is Omnath. But if you
mhm.
manage to get enough pressure and discard underneath the Omnath already, then you don't have to worry too much about it. And we see Cory opting for the same type of sideboarding strategy, although he's cutting the bolts. I like leaving in the bolts just because with Bowmaster and Shieldred, sometimes all you need is 3 more damage and you can go
Mm.
upstairs and finish it
So,
off.
sorry, I'm writing that down for our match.
Okay.
Cuts, terminate, keeps, bolt. I won't tell you what I would do because we're already back in game. Maybe if we go back, I'll tell you what I'll
All
do.
right. I hope this goes to a game 3 so I can start siphoning information from you as well.
That's right. Did you see Javier had only one Leyline Acidity as well? So, Javier values having that effect. It gets things like burn and a little bit here, but doesn't value it in large numbers.
So Corey's hand just has a Scammed Fury and a Bowmaster and a Dothy. I think it's pretty good. I don't think Scamming Fury is all that good in this matchup because there's so many answers to it in the form of Solitude, Fury, Leyline Binding, Teferi, etc. So I don't think that Corey should expect this Fury to stick around for very long. But at the same time, I do think that you probably play it on turn 1 anyways.
Yeah, definitely a moment where Corey, not happy to lose game one, but happy to be on the play here. If you're going to scam a Fury, you really don't want to be on the draw in that spot because your opponent is going to have so much more time, right? Getting something like even just a Teferi to unsummon the Fury might not solve it long term, but undoes that damage. And, getting to hit for 16 versus only 8 is huge in that world.
And we see
Looks
the
like he's
turn
coming.
1 Fury. Mason, I thought we banned Hogak.
We did ban Hogak. We have the Hogak that's also a removal spell, but it doesn't come back, so it's different.
Oh, okay. That makes sense. That's pretty
Yeah.
reasonable.
Yeah. Wait till you see Hogak 2. It's the same card with a 2 at the end.
Ooh. There
Yeah.
was the new spoiler from the new set called the Ancient One, which is a 2-mana 8/8. That was kind of like Hogak.
Oh, I didn't even see that card yet.
Oh yeah, it's sweet.
That's dope.
You need to have 8 permanent cards in your graveyard for it to attack or block, though. That's the catch.
Easy.
Simple. Not too
Guard,
big of a
Grave
deal for
Troll.
modern.
Attack for 8 from here. And you're seeing it now. This Fire Ice actually kind of a great pickup here for Javier. While it doesn't solve the problem, it will buy him a little bit of time against this Fury.
Bounty. Walking the voids. Come down as the turn 2
Oh,
play over Bowmaster, and the Fury was the pickup, which means now we can go Dead Gone the Dothy, Fury the Fury, and maybe Javier's sitting pretty after all.
yeah, I really like this. The real question I think Javier is debating right now is do I play Beans or do I answer the Dothy? I think I'm with you on answering the Dothy, but we have to see how he wants to play it.
Yeah, he can even grab the Sacred Foundry to allow him to have full domain
Hmm.
with that Zagoth Triome. Sultai plus Boros will get him there.
Here's the real question. Do you get rid of the Omnath with a Fire Ice? We have Caster Vision. We know there's an Orcish Bowmaster. Javier is great. Will he think of Bowmaster is the question.
I think if I were in Javier's spot and I didn't have caster vision, I would probably pitch the Fire Ice, hoping that the Omnath will catch me up in terms of life total because he's gonna take a little bit to fetch shock here, plus also 1 point off the Wicked Roll token. Wow, he's just casting Bean.
Yeah. And I guess what Javier's, maybe this is his line is, hey, I'm going to evoke this Fury, and if you Dothy and sack your Dothy to put my Fury in play, I'll just bounce it with my Teferi. Who cares? It's back to my hand.
Yeah, I guess that's his plan is just to ignore this Dothy, take maybe 3 more points of damage off of it, but the Bowmaster is gonna be quite good here.
Mm-hmm. And there's notably no red mana either, so we are going to need to fetch shock, eventually in order to cast these removal spells.
Second copy of Bowmaster's kind of a heater here, Mason.
Yeah, that one's not weak. That's how I would describe that. Yeah, and with having to fetch shock to get our mana, Javier is in a little bit of trouble because he's at, essentially 3 life.
Yeah, no red mana still means you gotta fetch shock at some point this game, or maybe just, take a turn off to fetch a tap land, which does not feel great because then you have to ice something.
That's not where Javier is wanting to be.
Basic Forest and a Teferi. Bowmaster's gonna get flashed in response, meaning that if you want to down take this Teferi will die for Dothy.
Yeah, that is a weird interaction. It kind of sees it happen. Don't worry about it. It just works.
Bounce the Dothy.
Mm.
Archering. Le French Bowmaster coming in to murder this Teferi, or maybe just go upstairs. Just goes upstairs.
Yeah, and that puts Javier down to 1 with the Bowmaster in hand. If he doesn't have an evoke.
Even through a Solitude evoke, you'd still draw 2 off the beans, and that would kill you
Yeah,
anyways.
that's right. So, wow, that is going to lock this game up if Cory Baumeister goes for it and sees through that. What a crazy game. And you have to think, normally, this idea from Javier to fetch the basic to save life makes some sense, but just with the way the game played out, it actually cost him more life.
Yeah, and it seems like it's a pretty straightforward line from Cory here. Main phase is Bowmaster. Oh, he just goes to combat. Okay, I guess this works too, right? Because it goes to 1. And
Yeah.
then main phase 2, bow you.
Boing.
Can I see some archering in the chat? Any archers? And just like
Javier
that, Javier takes an arrow to the knee on to game 3.
cuts his gemstone cavern, puts back in his triumph, calls it a day.
Yeah, simple sideboarding on the side of Javier, and it looks like Cory's gonna think a little bit more, maybe checking out Javier's list, seeing what he needs to watch out for. That 1 copy of Leyline of Sanctity will always be the white elephant in the room, something to kind of have in the back of your mind, like, maybe if I keep a discard heavy hand and they have the Leyline, I'm in trouble.
Yeah, and we're seeing more of these 1 ley lines, especially with things like Sanctity, because the evoke elementals are so good at sort of turning them into another resource later, right? Like in the past, it's like, well, I had this ley line in my hand in the mid game. I'm not very happy about it, right? So you want to play higher numbers, but we're seeing some players, go down to 1, 2 copies because you can actually convert them into cards.
Yeah, exactly. And we see the Kolaghan's command looks like come out from the side of Cory. I think he had that in the main deck and opts to take 1 copy of Terminate.
Yeah, maybe this is a moment where just, on the draw, he wants to have a chance to go 1 drop, 2 drop. Maybe play a Thoughtseize, hold up, terminate for an Omnath. Maybe that's what he's trying to set up. Curious to see what's going on there.
And he's thinking about swapping Kroxa for a 2nd copy of Terminate. Personally, I would play the 2 copies of the Lightning Bolt still, but I don't think the Kroxa is good at all in the Bean matchup. It turns out discarding 1 card when your opponent is drawing 2 to 3 cards off of every single spell they cast. Not very good. Also, it's not too hard to answer when you have Leyline Binding and Solitude in your list.
Yep. There's a real chance that we're going to have another Bean mirror.
There is. Or another scam mirror.
That's true, yeah. Yeah, whoever's opponent wins here, then we just got to get it to the rematch happens again,
Yeah, this is another scam-filled crazy hand from Cory. Looking like another turn 1 grief. Sniping Dead Gone, and then probably getting Solitude just like game 1.
Yep. Yeah, and unlike game one here, Javier doesn't have the mana to really support, drawing cards off the top like Beanstalk. So Javier actually really needs to find a green and white land pretty soon.
Yeah, this Fire Ice will buy him a little bit of time, but he does have kind of sketchy mana, just the Steam Vents and the Island. Not great. Not great at all.
You see the evoke, like you mentioned from game one. We'll probably see the Dead Gone go.
Yeah, Dead Gon's gonna get taken, and then Solitude's gonna trade for this Not Dead After All, plus the Grief, nobody coming back, and not very much pressure on the side of Cory. And just like game one, Cory's got multiple Fables in hand.
Hmm. Yeah, and we saw those. We were able to keep them in there a little bit, but if you don't have pressure to back up your card selection and card filtering, you're gonna fall behind against these four-color decks. A good way to think of it, right, is if you're trying to play a fair game, four-color is the best at doing it. So you have to do something else that they're not very good at in order to pressure them, like applying a lot of pressure early, as we see in Evoke Solitude here.
That's for sure been my strategy against these decks, is just get them dead before you can take them to the late game, because you will not win the late game more often than not unless you can get in those incremental points of chip damage.
Yeah.
Ice on the upkeep.
Yeah, I was gonna say game one he chose not to ice. Game two with the second copy of Fire Ice decided to do it. Rips a Shardless, so he gets the green source here. Oh,
Hollowed Fountain. Womp womp.
right, and we're gonna see another ice here. Yeah, you see him eyeballing it, trying to keep Cory off Fable the Mirror Breaker.
Yeah, another copy of Ice. Just looking for that green mana at this point. Blood Crypt probably going to enter untapped. Cory doesn't really care about his life total, so I think you can afford to shock here and at least scare Javier into thinking that you might have a Baumeister, when in reality it's just a Terminate that's not going to do that much.
Yeah, we're at the seeing.
And Javier's mana kind of reminiscent to your mana back
Mm-hmm.
in match one when you played the mirror, when you could have gone like Omnath into Time Warp, but you couldn't fetch another blue source because you drew the Steam Vents. And you had
Yeah,
that was off of a Windswept Heath too.
yeah, it was incredibly rough there. And we're seeing, a little justice there. I think Javier just wants the game again. He likes gaming. It's not late enough at night for him. And yeah, we see this Beanstalk drawn, but
Wow.
no green mana. And the crazy part about all this is we talked about the pressure. If Cory doesn't apply pressure, Javier can rip a forest, slam this bean and start slamming cards and maybe get back in this game. So if you're a Cory Baumeister fan, you're going to see a lot of pressure here for him to close the door.
Yeah, I imagine this Terminate and maybe even a Fable's gonna, wow, it just keeps everything. I think I would have been the Terminate and the Fable, try to prioritize hitting another land drop here so you can start double spelling and get even more pressure.
Yeah, I really love the at least banning one of those cards. You have to see Cory. I mean, I guess Cory's just basically thinking maybe the only way I lose is if I flood out. So let's just, take it a little slow and steady.
Yeah, I really like getting a land drop down here, because if you can go Grief into Ragavan and then
Mm.
maybe snipe this Fury, snipe this Omnath, you're probably in a pretty good spot.
Yeah, and remember, Cory does know the Omnath's in hand for Javier. I wonder if the bean's the take. You
I
can hit
can't imagine
Omnath and
it
then
is.
okay.
I agree with the
See,
Fury as the take.
the incredibly greedy play is you snipe the Omnath, leave them with no pitch options, and just pray up.
That's so greedy, I love it.
Yeah.
Okay, well, Cory hit the land drop after all. Mismatching Blood Crypts, really just a crime, honestly,
Mm.
especially on MTGO. You got no excuses.
Yeah, for sure. I for one have matching of all my shock lands on my deck.
Yeah, I mean, in paper, I get it. I don't have Magic Shocks in paper, but come on. We got to do better, Cory.
As we are going to see an attack here. And hits a beanstalk. If you're Javier, you actually love to see it. Now, Cory might play it as a redraw, but Javier really needs that mana.
Yeah, I think Cory's just going to jam another Fable here and just solidify his lead so far that Javier has no draws to let him come back from this. But maybe Cory's like, this is my one opportunity to become the bean myself.
Yeah, Cory really looking for that screenshot equity if I've combined the two menaces of modern, into one deck. I will say this, from Cory's perspective, you get that Fable down, things are looking pretty good because, Javier has to answer the Fable with a grief, or you're going to start getting griefed in your draw step, or sooner, and probably in this case, and that's going to get out of hand very quickly.
Yeah, I like playing the Fable here a lot. But Cory's going to take a minute to think about it. Maybe
I
being
like
like,
it.
well, if I play the Bean, shock in my Blood Crypt, I can at least hold up Terminate, and then terminate this Omnath if it comes down.
Mm-hmm. We have to see exactly how he wants to play it.
Much like you, Cory is attempting to maximize his camera time currently.
I like to take a little bit to think, I've got a lot of strong opponents in Cory Baumeister this week, and I just want to take my time to think.
1. Green Bean.
Beans.
Into the swamp. Play the swamp,
Swamp.
hold up, terminate, pass. Cory hadn't been eating enough vegetables, and he said, I need some green beans in my life. Give me that. Teferi can actually bounce his beanstalk back, but it probably needs to go after a Goblin Shaman token or just the Reflection, which makes a lot of sense. You don't want to get draw step locked off of that Grief plus Fable Reflection copy. And no 4th land from Javier still, so he's in trouble.
Yeah, and this is something that does happen in these bean decks, especially, recently we've all been cutting down on lands without Ren 6 to really, cheat on lands too. We're all relying on bean to make our land drops a bit more. And this is, happens, especially when you keep a hand that doesn't have green mana. I think Javier's keep made a lot of sense with kind of how the matchup typically plays out, but, take risks. Sometimes you get punished.
Yeah, and, well, 7 damage coming across, putting Javier down to 2. And I think Javier's donezo's.
Yeah, I thought we might see the Solitude there, just to save some life and give us a little bit more time. But I'm trying to think of how he gets out of this, because he does need to probably shock in all of his green sources that aren't the Seiju or Forest. So he does have 2 to be fair, but yeah, and Cory's like pedal to the metal time. Listen, you got to have a lot of it if you're going to win.
Yeah, I mean, if this were against you, maybe Cory would not commit this much into the Sunfall, but Sunfalls is 5 mana and uncastable at this point, so that's the
Yeah,
card
keep
I'm
that.
scared about. Your sideboard as well.
Yeah, that was my my tech for both the mirror and scam. As we do see a win here for Cory Baumeister, so congratulations to Cory. He is going to move on